So let's spend a few minutes here today talking about the differences between internet technologies, cloud-based technologies, and local software installed technology. And we're going to start our conversation today around this concept of a castle, a moat, and a drawbridge. So stay tuned. We're going to jump right to it. So the castles were created years ago to keep everyone inside of the castle walls safe. And of course, the moat was added for additional security, and the drawbridge, well, hey, let's just take it over the top, right? So great security available within that castle. And today, our IT environments are posturing to do the exact same thing with cloud-based technologies. So let's talk a little bit about the differences in a hypothetical comparison of real cost as it is associated with cloud-based technology or applications that you run in your local environment. So here's a comparison between the two. We have cloud-based technologies on the left with the blue box and local-based technology on the right with the red box. And we've really broken these down into two primary areas: annual costs and one-time costs. So let's start on the left side of the screen with the internet-based or software as a service models. Here I have listed Office 365, ServiceNow, Salesforce, SAP, SLCM, all great applications, all with high security levels available for their customers. Now, whether or not you're in the federal government or in anywhere around the globe and you're concerned about security, whether that's GDPR or GDPR, PII, sensitive information, HIPAA, FedRAMP, it doesn't really matter. Security is very important and can be very expensive. Cloud technology kind of creates that castle and moat. So imagine if you were to have multiple cloud technologies running within your environment. Just pick a couple of them there from the left-hand side and use those within your castle. Now the trick here to reduce cost and still allow your users to produce results is to have multiple arrangements with these different technologies used within the cloud environment and build a castle around those technologies with a moat that somebody else is managing. So what do I mean by that? Well, when you have a cloud-based service, the moat, the outside perimeter, as we would call, is managed by the software provider. So whoever's providing that software as a service or infrastructure or platform as a service, they're providing the boundary protection. So that means you don't have to do vulnerability scans and pen scans. You probably should, even though you're inside their environment, but they're taking care of that heavy lifting for you. Now, you still have some controls and some security you have to implement at the application layer, perhaps. But for most of us that are using Office 365, how many of us has actually cracked open the Compliance Center and adjusted the security in our environment? Some of us have. But by default, Microsoft is already protecting the moat, and we're safe inside the castle, or at least safer inside the castle. So outside of operational and general security strength of cloud versus local, let's look at some of the numbers that may be representative of your environments. So remember, these are hypothetical numbers that we're looking at here, although the premise has been validated for many decades. In fact, at least 15 years, we validated that going to cloud technology is absolutely the less cost when it comes to running an IT environment. So let's take a look at the left side of the screen here real quick and kind of do some number comparisons. Come on, join me, and we'll get right into the details of these costs. Look at those annual costs for the cloud-based environment. Yes, we have an annual cost of licensing or access to that service. I have it listed as $10,000. Shoot, you could push it up to $50,000 a year, and you would still be way ahead of the local install. Notice also that my cyber operations is around $10,000, whereas a local install of an application may run me $200,000 a year to do all of the testing, certification, and all that effort that needs to happen. Remember, cyber professionals are not cheap, and that work can be very expensive. Now, of course, we have some administrator training that's required more on a standalone system than it would be on a cloud system because you're not really making those modifications to the environment. And our FTE from an operational cost, or our labor cost, considerably less in the cloud environment. I have it represented here as 5K versus 40K. And that's primarily because on the cloud environment, my backup and recovery requirements are minimal. I'm not doing patching and security updates and all of those other things that accompany having an application inside of my local environment. It's being done for me at the cloud level. Now, we have to also consider the one-time costs. So let's look at those. So on a one-time cost to create that cyber package, I'm really only creating it, it's around 100K, let's just say, for this example. And why so inexpensive when I'm looking at the right hand of the screen there with my local app at 500K? Well, remember, when you're inside the castle walls, you're only creating security controls that are inside of the castle. You don't need to worry about, building the castle wall, building the moat, and building the drawbridge. Somebody else has done all that work for you. The cloud provider has done that work for you. So it makes sense now that the cost for cyber when I'm building my own moat and my own castle is going to be considerably higher than that found within an internet provider. One-time costs are very expensive. So you have to take that in consideration when you do your total cost of ownership over a 3-year period. And as you see represented on the screen here, we really go from $175,000 a year, $175,000 for 3 years to, $1.3 million for 3 years for a standalone app. Now you may ask yourself, golly, that's a huge difference, right? Your numbers have got to be wrong. And as my disclaimer says, these are hypothetical numbers, but I guarantee you that the premise is absolutely correct. I have seen it time and time and time again. If it were not so, Office 365 would have died years ago. But it hasn't. In fact, more and more users, over 1 billion, are now using that platform. Why? Because I don't have to have my local Exchange and SharePoint servers and file share servers and all the security and operating systems. I don't have to have any of that in the databases. I don't have to have any of that at my local site. I can just buy it as a service. It's a huge cost savings when you calculate the numbers more than just the immediate. To look at when you buy a software application as a one-time cost is short-sighted. You have to be able to look at all of the costs associated with building that castle and maintaining the walls so that you can have a secure environment. You can protect your organization, whatever your requirement is, whether it ranges from PII to FedRAMP or FISMA or HIPAA, it doesn't matter. The cost is real. There is a cost associated with doing that level of work. I would strongly encourage you to take a closer look at the costs. Again, these are hypothetical numbers, but run these numbers for yourself. And I think you will find that over the course of time, going with internet-based, cloud-based technology will save you time, money. It'll allow you to transfer out and move your support efforts. I'll give you a great example before we close here. If I had a staff of people running a custom application or an application at my local site and those staff leave, I'm stuck in a bind. Or I'm committed to an application that turns to be legacy overnight almost. Now I have to maintain that legacy, and over the course of years, maintaining it just increases my support costs because the skill pool, right, the talent pool with the skills necessary to maintain that legacy system dwindles over the course of time. Having spent my almost 40 years in information technology for the U.S. government, I have firsthand experience where running these systems that are decades old just shoot our costs way out of control. And then it gets to a point where we're so dependent upon those systems that we can't get off. So do yourself a favor. I know this is a This is a journey. It's not a destination, but begin working in your environments to move into cloud-based technologies wherever possible. And I would submit to you that a gross majority of what you do can be reprocessed to fit into a cloud-based model.